The story begins with the hero's fight against the Demon King. The Demon King tells him that if he doesn't stop him now, it will be the end of the world. This is how the hero invokes his 5th dragon sword, while the Demon King activates his maximum power so that they can end the confrontation once and for all. After fighting for a while, they are both halfway exhausted, slowly approaching each other and stabbing their swords into each other. In that way, they both fall to the ground, and the hero is happy because it's all over. After some time, we see many excited students entering their academy. Our protagonist, the former hero, is also impressed with the good relationship between the students. From now on, he will make friends and live life like an ordinary person. Inside the academy, he only thinks of making friends and greets everyone he can. Here, a group comments that he is a very peculiar student. Perhaps he transferred in. At that point, they see he is approaching. Our guy introduces himself as Blade. The others are also delighted to meet him and each tells him their name. With that, Blade understands that now he has 4 friends. If he keeps this up, he will be able to quickly have 10 or even 100 friends. But one of them tells him that to have so many friends, he must befriend all the students. Suddenly, a girl appears asking what is going on, and why are they making so much noise in the lobby? Don't they know they are in the prestigious Rosewood Academy? One of the guys tells Blade that she is the best student at the academy. They call her the Empress. Blade introduces himself, but she asks puzzled who he is. She had never seen him before. They explain to her that it seems Blade just transferred in. A transfer? Here they only accept aspiring heroes to protect the world. At this point, no new students come in, but Blade tells her he doesn't care about being a hero, he just wants to make friends. The girl asks incredulously what is wrong with him. How can he be so unambitious? Blade tells her he needs to go to the principal's office if she can indicate how to get there. She takes him there, knocks on the door, and says she brought a lost crybaby. The principal tells them to come in. The principal looks imposing. The girl asks puzzled what is this about, but Blade greets him casually like an old friend. She asks indignantly what is he doing, doesn't he know who he is? He is the king? The king smiles and tells her the previous principal had spoken to him about her. He knows she has an impeccable record and she blushes. She is surprised. She knows the king is an exceptional warrior and she can't believe he will teach them. She never imagined talking to the king. The king says that's enough. She can leave because he has to talk to the boy privately, which upsets her. What's with this guy? How did he become friends with the king? Blade asks where his majesty is, and the principal reveals that he is there to help him regain his hero powers. But Blade insists he just wants to be a normal boy. The principal tells him the students are very good. They will help rehabilitate him. They plan to drastically change the curriculum because the previous principal was too lenient. Blade makes it clear to him that it is no longer necessary. The Demon King is gone. Then in training, the girl is surprised to see Blade there. What is he doing in the advanced class? Blade explains he took the basic exam, but they told him to come here. She mocks him, saying he must have cheated to get in, and that they don't accept nobodies like him in this academy. Blade asks her not to say that he is very serious and his plan is to make a ton of friends. He introduces himself, asking everyone's names. Another girl appears saying the teacher was calling them. Ernest says she's going, and Blade takes the opportunity to introduce himself and ask her name. She says her name is Sophie. The boy greets her and says it's nice to meet her. Then Ernest calls the teacher over. He asks what's going on, and she gives him the evil eye until he agrees. She shows Blade the armor, telling him it's made of an impenetrable magical metal. The advanced students can cut it, so he must try too. If he fails, he must admit he cheated and will have to leave, because he's on another level. Blade chooses his second sword, and the class is impressed with his fighting aura, almost as if he were a dragon. He destroys the armor, and there is so much power that the flames burn Ernest's clothes, leaving everyone open-mouthed. Although his sword breaks, he is pleased with his performance. Ernest is still in shock and asks him who the hell he is. Blade simply replies, "I'm just a normal person. There is no one more normal than me." Later in the dining hall, the redhead is eating alone when she sees the same 4 guys from before. It's Blade who tells them there's free space here, but they ignore him. Ernest wonders if Blade is a fool, since everyone fears him. But when he tries the food, his surprise is genuine. The curry is incredible. He can't believe how delicious it is. Ernest then decides to retract her previous accusations, but Blade doesn't even remember what she's talking about. This annoys her a little, but also leaves her reflecting. The girl admits that Blade has talent and apologizes for her previous treatment of him. Although he pretends not to remember what she said, Deep down, he is grateful. Later in her room, Ernest thinks about Blade. Does eating together already make them friends? What nonsense she was saying. But something inside tells her yes, that her words made him happy. He is her first friend after all. Suddenly, the sword on her wall makes a noise that scares her. We find out that many years ago, that sword spoke to her, asking her to surrender to it. Upon taking it, her hair changed color and the sword goaded her to cut, destroy, and burn. Furious, Ernest yells at the sword to shut up. She will be the next leader of the family and will not surrender so easily. The sword seems to understand and calms down. The next day, we see Ernest fighting Leonard. She asks him to take the fight seriously, and although Leonard is reluctant to use his spear against a girl, he decides to give it his all. Blade is excited about the confrontation, while Ernest defeats Leonard with a single blow. Then it's Sophie's turn, who faces a tired Ernest. Despite her efforts, Ernest attacks her with a fire spell, and Sophie decides to surrender. Now it's Blade's turn to fight, although he is not sure. Ernest assures him it's okay. However, in the middle of the fight, something goes wrong with Ernest, and Blade quickly takes her to the infirmary. There they discover that she is under some kind of spell or curse, and the nurse cannot help her. When Ernest wakes up, there is a comical exchange between her and Blade about her weight and health, and she is stubborn about following the nurse's orders. At night, our guy went to defeat some robots, opens the door with a crystal, and enters a secret room in the academy. He starts looking for data on Ernest's sword until he discovers that the demonic sword is called Asmodeus. That name gives him chills. Just then a robot was about to attack him, but Blade destroys it with his sword. Then he meets up with Ernest, to which Blade reveals that he knows the secret of her sword. That sword has a will of its own and grants tremendous power to its owner, but he knows she still doesn't fully control it. Here she tells him that when she was 6 years old, she unwittingly took the cursed demonic sword that her family guarded. It tried to take over her body and her will entered her, thirsty for war. Since then, she has suppressed her instincts, but as soon as she lets her guard down, she hears it. She hears the voice of Asmodeus asking her to cut and burn. The only thing is that it still hasn't managed to overpower her because she is very stubborn. Blade assures Ernest that they just need to get the sword to recognize Ernest as its owner. Although there are risks, like the birth of a demon, Blade promises to finish it off if that happens. That night, Ernest points her sword at the sky, summoning the demonic sword Asmodeus. She asks to make a pact with it, to test its strength and consume her if it can. The demon agrees, and Ernest feels confident that she will succeed. In her mind, Ernest faces the demon, who presents itself as fire, power, and violence. It asks her to fight together, although there is much it wants to destroy. Ernest stops it, determined to fight for her pride and her name. She clashes her sword against the demon, creating a massive explosion. The flame fades away and Blade runs to catch her. The fusion is successful. Ernest changes. Her attitude becomes friendlier and her appearance impresses everyone. She wonders if she looks weird, but they assure her she looks splendid. The next morning, Blade continues training with the other heroes as usual. Suddenly, his friend Ernest stops him and points out that during fights he tends to look away, which is rude towards his opponent. Blade stays thoughtful, not understanding where the comment is coming from. His companion Leonard nudges him and tells him he should answer the girl, but Blade is totally confused and doesn't know what to say. Leonard's laugh breaks the tension and he kids that Blade should have at least noticed Ernest's new hairstyle. Blade is surprised he didn't realize the change, while Ernest is saddened to go unnoticed. Suddenly, Ernest suggests that if Blade has time to mess around with Leonard, he should go see what's up with Sophie. Blade asks why she's always alone, to which Ernest explains that Sophie does whatever she's told, but doesn't make her own decisions. Later, Blade starts teaching Sophie how to use a sword. At first, she struggles to keep up, but after a few hours, she's able to easily slice through armor. Blade is impressed by how quickly she learns and congratulates her. At that moment, Sophie asks if she can beat Ernest yet. Blade explains reaching Ernest's level is difficult and requires a lot more training. Sophie seems to understand, but suddenly she grabs Blade, taking him by surprise, and knocks him to the ground. Still on the floor, Blade asks what she's doing. Sophie responds that she's stronger than him now. Blade nods, but points out he wouldn't be able to move in that position now. Sophie comes closer and tells him her opponents could. Blade agrees to continue training with her the next day to improve her technique. The next day, the principal asks Blade how school is going. Blade responds that he has managed to make some friends. The king nods and says that's good. After all, Blade has been the hero since he was 3 years old, so it's normal he wants to have friends and lead a normal life. Then the king asks about his friends and Blade tells him he has several, but lately he's gotten closer to Sophie. The king thinks it's natural for Blade to be interested in her since she's strong, but still, he feels like something's missing, especially considering that his ultimate goal was to surpass him. Blade, confused, asks for an explanation, and the king tells him about the project for the great artificial hero. He continues explaining that if a great hero like Blade exists, then it should be possible to create someone similar. Some people had that idea, using forgotten techniques on a human with potential, trying to manifest powers through artificial means. They even duplicated the original human, experimenting with experiments to perfect the results. Blade interrupts, asking if Sophie is that person. The king reveals that she is the 12th copy of the artificial hero, and that she was treated for a long time as a mere experiment. Blade stands up furious, but the king calms him, saying he ended that organization long ago. He admits he should have informed Blade earlier. Next, he tells Blade that when he found Sophie, he promised her freedom, but she asked him if that was in order. Blade runs off, worried. The idea of creating the perfect hero prevented Sophie from having a normal life. All of this is his fault. It's all because of his existence. In that case, he will give back to Sophie the normal life she should have had. But there's only one thing. What does a normal life mean? He goes to the infirmary to ask the nurse. She wonders why he's there. His checkup isn't scheduled yet. Blade asks her to tell him what it means to be normal, what kids his age usually do. The nurse agrees and says she'll teach him everything he needs to know about youth. Blade gets it. She's referring to youth. He asks his friend Leonard what youth means. Leonard knows what it means, but youth often brings love. What does love mean? So he goes to the cafeteria and asks a girl to explain the meaning of love. The girls blush a little, but tell him they usually go on dates. What does going on dates mean? So he goes to Ernest to ask what a date is. She gets very nervous and asks him to wait, but Blade insists that she respond quickly. She explains to him that it's when couples spend time alone together, go for walks, go shopping, but they're not at that stage yet. She thinks it's too soon for them to go on a date. Blade understands now and runs off saying he'll go on a date. Ernest realizes he's not talking about her and wonders who it will be with. Then Blade asks a girl where Sophie is. She tells him she's still inside. He opens the door yelling Sophie's name and goes into the girl's shower. But Blade gets scared and asks her to go on a date. Sophie asks if it's an order, to which Blade says no, but it's very important to him. Sophie is surprised and says she accepts. Later, Ernest and the girls keep watch on Blade. They found out he went into the showers and there have been many complaints about it. Ernest wonders why he did it and will talk seriously with him. The date begins and Blade greets Sophie, seeming quite punctual. Sophie asks if that's not normal, since she doesn't know anything about dates. Blade tells her not to worry, that he'll take care of everything. He's been studying a lot, so they'll review today's plan. They'll meet at 10, greet each other at 10:01, start moving at 10:03, take a walk at 10:40, and rest at 11. The girls, while observing them, think he might be being too detailed. It doesn't look like a date, but rather a mission. At that moment, Sophie points out it's already 10:04, which makes Blade nervous and opens his book to review the plan. But suddenly she grabs his arm and tells him they have to get going. Ernest sees how she's leading him by the arm, so innocent, and then jealously says it's normal. They continue following Sophie and Blade as they get ice cream and run around. As they cross a bridge, Sophie tells him she'd like to feed the fish. Blade agrees, but the three girls are below, using bamboo tubes to breathe underwater. They throw food into the water. The girls think this is too much. They're not doing normal things, they're on a date, so they have to get going. Meanwhile, Blade announces to Sophie that their next mission will be to drink that drink called Lovely Infinite Tropical. Sophie asks if they just have to drink, and Blade tells her to wait. There's still 1 minute until 10:30. But Sophie says she's thirsty, so there's no problem. They both start drinking the juice, but Sophie realizes she's having trouble drinking it, so she asks him to come closer. Blade approaches, but as he touches her cheek, he falls to the ground. Sophie asks what's wrong, but Blade isn't sure. He doesn't know what happened to him. Sophie makes it clear that she can't complete this mission alone. She needs his help. He responds that he knows, but his heart won't stop beating so hard. He feels like it's going to burst. The girls realize they still haven't been discovered, while Ernest can't believe they're touching cheeks. In that case, the brown-haired girl gives her a dessert to calm her down. It's too delicious, but then they turn to look and realize Sophie has already left. Later, Blade keeps looking behind him, and Sophie asks what's wrong. He says it's nothing, although he feels like they're being followed. Blade takes out his book to see what's next, but realizes how late it is. Sophie takes his hand, telling him not to worry, she'll take a shortcut. Then they both run up the wall, jump into the air, do a spin, and keep roughly jumping through the city. They arrive at a nighttime fountain, where Sophie asks if this is his final objective. Blade tells her it's said to be magical. Sophie doesn't understand, and Blade responds that neither does he. Still, Sophie feels like she had a lot of fun today. He doesn't know what to tell her, so she asks him to ask her something. Why did he do all this for her? Blade then explains he did it because they're friends. Sophie's eyes light up. Are they friends? Blade responds that yes, of course they are. Sophie heard that friends don't hide secrets from each other. There's something he still hasn't told her. If they're friends, if he truly wants to be her friend, there's something he has to tell her. She confesses to him that she's not an ordinary human. She's an incomplete experiment created to be an artificial hero. They gave her the artificial hero's powers. Powers of the artificial hero? Blade doesn't understand what she's referring to. Sophie asks him to watch, then shows him that with her powers she can alter the laws of physics. However, there's one catch. She still can't fully control it. Sophie shows she increased her mass by 10,000. She also shows she can stop time. Right now, she can only use the artificial hero's powers for 10 seconds, so Blade won't keep any secrets either. He confesses that people call him the Great Hero. She's very impressed, but Blade clarifies that rather, they used to call him that, since now he can't use those powers. Sophie tells him she understands, so Blade asks if she happened to already know. She says no, but felt there was something familiar about him. Blade says he's very sorry, an apology won't be enough. She can hate him if she wants. Sophie asks why she'd do that, and Blade explains that's the reason she was born with those accursed powers. That power is a curse. He never asked to be the hero. People told him he could save others, so he had no choice but to do it. He started displaying his powers at age 3, has fought endless monsters, has been on the verge of death thousands of times, and has gotten stronger. But there's still one problem. It's impossible to save everyone. Some people just can't be saved. People get furious with you if you don't save someone, and everyone says, why didn't you save them? Weren't you the great hero? Blade gets sad and starts crying. She goes over to him and says that even though he didn't choose it, he was the great hero. She tells Blade that after the king saved her, she went on a journey to find out his identity. She met people saved by the hero, entire cities. She's seen it a lot, he should be more proud. Blade tells her he can't be proud, to which Sophie responds it doesn't matter if he can't be. She's still proud they created her to be the great artificial hero. She wants to become someone like him. This impacts Blade a lot. He remembers so much of his battles and everything that happened. She's right, he can't keep going on like this. He won't let his past affect who he truly is now. Sophie says that sounds good to her. His hero identity will be a secret they keep between the two of them. The next day, Blade went to have lunch with Sophie and Ernest. As they were eating, Ernest told Blade he had food on his face. Sophie tried to wipe it off with her handkerchief, leaning in very close to Blade, which made Ernest jealous. Just then, 4 of Blade's friends came over and asked if they could sit with him. When Jessica, a brown-haired girl, sat down, she asked Blade what he thought of their outfits. Blade asked what she meant, and the 4 explained that they had recently moved up to the advanced class, where they were allowed to wear whatever they wanted. So Jessica wanted his opinion on how they looked. Blade thought they must be cold in those skimpy clothes. Just then, Leonard came over, gushing over the girl's beauty which had captivated him. Ernest told him yes, they had noticed. But changing the subject, Leonard asked Blade if he had seen the news. Rumors were circulating that the king was going to bring a magical beast to the academy. This frightened the others because they would have to face this beast for training. However, Blade was unconcerned. Ernest told him they were talking about a magical beast, but Blade explained that coming from the king, it wouldn't surprise him. Suddenly, the whole place started shaking like an earthquake. It seemed the beast had already arrived, so they'd better evacuate everyone. Outside the academy, the guards were worried because a dragon was approaching. The best thing would be to call His Majesty, the only one who could stand up to a dragon. When Blade arrived, he wondered if this was the magical beast. Turned out to be a giant dragon. Blade approached it with a plate of food, attracting the dragon's attention. Sophie reassured Ernest because Blade had a plan. Blade moved in closer and with one punch knocked the dragon down. Everyone wondered how he had defeated that dragon without using any weapons. Blade insisted that the dragon was just a baby. It was probably scary, so he offered it some of his extra spicy food. The others were still amazed at how he'd beaten it without weapons. This guy was very suspicious. Nervously, Blade told them this was normal, that anyone could defeat a baby dragon with one punch. Still, they didn't believe him. Just then, the dragon started to transform and took on a human form. She threw herself at Blade, calling him father and saying she had finally found him. Blade asked where the dragon was, not believing this girl had been the dragon. Ernest explained that the girl had transformed from the dragon, but Blade kept insisting on asking where the dragon was, thinking they were pulling his leg. Finally, Ernest told him irritably that this girl was the dragon, and Sophie had seen her transform too. The girl fell silent, but she wanted to play with Blade, impressed by his punch earlier. She expected no less from her father. Confused, Blade wondered what he should do. In the end, the two went to take a bath together, where it was seen that Blade had strange markings on his body. She wondered how he had ended up like that. Let's call the girl Eri. Eri tells him she can also keep promises, like a dragon who fulfills a pact even at the cost of its life. Just then, Ernest opens the bathroom door but is embarrassed to see them together. By the way, Ernest asks him if he has found out anything about this girl yet. Ernest then explains to him that magical beasts and dragons are creatures that seek strength. Even if their body disappears when they die, a fragment of their soul endures as a set of knowledge. When that soul reincarnates into another being, it copies the form of the strength that defeated it. For that reason, a dragon can take on a human form if defeated by a human. Although uncommon, there aren't many humans who can overcome such a high-level beast. Blade says it's likely a human defeated Ari in her past life. Ari loves her new name given by her new father. From that moment, the two started swimming together, which annoyed Ernest a bit. Ari asked Blade to feed her mouth to mouth. Obviously, she could eat on her own, but food tastes better when her father feeds her. The other girls try to feed her too, but Eri refuses. She doesn't plan on being friends with any weaklings. Blade is the only one who should pay attention to her. In the morning, he has to give her a kiss and he'll have to feed her. He agreed, at which point the others asked if he was really going to do it. The kiss, that is. Well, he said no to that. What's more, Eri knows Blade enjoys looking at the girls. Eri won't allow that, and she angrily leaves the scene. The girls can't believe it. Blade really does look at them. He's guilty. In that case, they all declare him guilty, so the next day they leave him alone in a corner. In the advanced class, Eri realized everyone was getting along great. She felt out of place, so decided to leave. Blade, worried, started looking for her, and Eri went alone to the academy's park. There some boys saw her and asked if she wanted to join their practice, but she refused, saying it wasn't a place for her. Meanwhile, Blade ran into Eri and asked what was up with her. She said nothing but that she was hungry and suggested they go eat something. Blade agreed, promising to make her favorite dish, though this time not so spicy. A few hours later, we find Eri sleeping in her bed with Blade keeping her company. Ernest knocked on the door, and outside, Blade explained to her that dragons torment their offspring when they're born. When the baby sees something stronger than itself, it identifies that as its father. That's why Eri called Blade father. She could have been alone since birth. Ernest warned that he couldn't pretend to be her father forever. Blade knew that, but also knew that if he didn't act as her father, Eri would end up alone in this world. Ernest argued that wasn't fair, but Blade simply apologized. Ernest understood Blade was serious when he decided to take care of Eri. Blade tells Sophie that if she's okay. Ernest had not noticed that Sophie was hiding. Sophie is like Ernest, always worried about Blade. Blade tells her everything is fine, she doesn't have to worry. Sophie understands, so she leaves. Ernest tells Blade that she was also leaving, as she didn't want any rumors spreading about her sneaking off alone with a boy. After this, Blade returned to his room but discovered Eri was no longer there. He found her on the academy roof looking at the sky. When he asked what she was doing, Eri pointed to the moon and said watching it relaxed her. She explained the big moon was the mother and the small one the daughter, so they were always together. Hearing this, Blade asked if she would like them to be friends. But Eri replied he was mistaken, that dragons are physically and mentally tougher than humans, so they don't live in groups, but always live and die alone. She clarified that as a dragon she didn't need friends, all she needed was him. Later, Blade loses sight of Eri. He goes to enter his room when he hears Eri inside. It seems she's playing with stuffed animals, but there's something special. Each one represents Blade's friends. He realizes she's very observant, although there are too many stuffed animals here. Then he realizes the others represent all the academy students. He didn't even know that many names himself. In that case, he leaves the room to let her be alone. How had he not realized this before? He walks away, feeling very depressed. Ernest asks if he found her yet, but Blade walks right past and starts banging his head against the wall. She tells him to stop for a moment. What's going on with him? Outside, Blade explains to her that Eri needs friends, but can't have them due to her nature. Dragons don't recognize anyone weaker than themselves as equals. To accept a friend, Eri would first have to defeat them. However, Blade having defeated Eri doesn't mean anything. He can't really be her friend if he can't do anything to help her. In that case, they'll look for help, as Blade can't do it alone. Friends are there to help each other. He can't figure it out by himself. He must rely on others. If he asks for help, everyone will come and support him. The next day, they both went to visit the students during their training. Everyone wondered what the Empress was doing there. She wants to ask a favor of them. They need the students to fight Ari in her dragon form and defeat her. The others tell the Empress it's easy to say, but they aren't at the level to face a dragon. Seeing they are scared, Blade begs them on his knees. What's more, the other friends come to ask the same. They are also worried about Ari. Seeing such insistence, in the end, the students agreed. After that, they brought in Ari in dragon form. The king was very excited. This is the kind of training he was hoping to see. Blade found out some time ago that when they captured her, the humans set a trap so he couldn't fight. It must have been frustrating, but this time everything will be more fair. He'll see how strong humans are and why humans can be Ari's friends.